What's up, squad? How we living? Live on TikTok, live on YouTube. Week 4 reaction show is here. We're in full swing with the college football season. I was in Louisville this past week, so appreciate everyone who watched that game. It was the first game I ever called with no ties. It was 90-degree heat, ideal press box in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's funny though. That's one of those games where I'm so glad I called Louisville for the first time in 2025, not Louisville for the first time in 2023, because I would have made that mistake. Luckily, I was watching what was the PGA Championship like 3 years ago when they did that segment on ESPN about asking the golfers, like, "Oh, how do you say Louisville?" So I don't think I messed up saying it in that game. But anyways, that was a fun one. Louisville's a team, man. People are sleeping on. Nobody is talking about Louisville. Nobody inside that building, they feel like they have a championship caliber team. But there was a lot of other championship caliber teams around college football, which I'll get into. TikTok, a lot of footage, like film breakdown stuff. So check it out over on YouTube. I'll clip it out there for each of these segments. But we're talking TCU and Josh Hoover. I'm talking Carson Beck and what I saw from Miami and how, it's a different mold with Miami this year. And I think the average fan just thinks, hey, flash and pizzazz with Miami. That's not how this team's built. Not one bit. Fernando Mendoza, an Indiana squad. Kurt Signetti, year 2, baby. Encore, running it back. Last year wasn't a fluke. I think they proved a lot in that game. I'm bummed for my USC Trojans because I was hoping that, this upcoming week, which is still a big time matchup, but not as big, that literally would have been the biggest game this decade for Illinois if they had won that game and USC was coming into town. But we'll chat them. And John Mateer, man, he's become the face of college football. It's cool when there's a preseason prediction that then actually works out and actually lives up to the billing. And good for you, Sooner fans, because Mateer's been that dude, and he's a baller and getting a little ahead of it, but he's got NFL first round talent. No one's really talking that way. The film very much shows that, so I'll get into that. And then I thought this was a different week in terms of the new era of college football is very much here. And you might be like, Max, what? Like, we've been knowing that. Like, the portal's nothing new, NIL's nothing new. But to me, it hit me in a different kind of way this week specifically. And I'll unpack that a little bit more. But I appreciate everyone hanging on TikTok and YouTube. And without further ado, let's get into this Miami Florida game. So when most people hear about the U, I think they picture like the trash talking defenses with playmakers all around, like once in a generation dudes. They picture the skill position groups with like the 0-1 running back room, the loaded tight end and receiver rooms there. I mean, that 0-1 running back room literally had 4 NFL dudes in it, which is crazy. 3 of which were Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, and Frank Gore. But my point is, they usually picture the flash, the bravado, the spectacle, which is what Pat McAfee did jumping off a high dive in the pool. Like, that's what you expect when you're thinking about Miami. And the nostalgic guy in me and in a lot of us, I think, latches onto that, especially because not only the Pat McAfee stuff, but like last year's team 2 with Cam Ward and the swag that he brought and the crazy throws and the high flying offense. They were 3rd in the nation in passing yards per game last year. Cam Ward ended up being the number 1 overall pick, had the like celebration and all that. But this year's team's different. The stats prove that or show that. The film shows that. And this Florida game really drove that home for me. Their strength on both sides of the ball is in the trenches. Fact. It's not skill players. Skill players are easier to talk about, but both sides of the ball, it's front 7 defense and offensive line. That's the strength of the offense. They're not really concerned about entertainment value. And that's what you get when you hire an offensive line coach and Mario Cristobal to be your head guy. They're wearing opponents down. That's what's happened in Notre Dame, which that should be Notre Dame's strength. That's what happened with the USF game. And that's, again, what happened against their rival, the Florida Gators. By the time I'm filming this, there's been no Napier news, so we'll keep an eye on that. But they're just making opponents fearful of their ability to just wear them down. And they don't want any part of this. It's not necessarily the flash. It's built in the trenches, which Again, I don't think the average fan. I think the average fan thinks, "Hey, pizzazz and flash." That's not the case, and that showed in that game. Carson Beck was 17 for 30, 152 yards, one interception, one sack, no touchdowns. That film, though, was a lot better than that stat line might suggest, which we'll get into that. I got 3 plays of Carson Beck that I'll break down. Mark Fletcher Jr., they do a lot of that, like 2 running back formations, which again speak to the new identity. He had 24 carries, 116 yards. Miami's now up to number 2 in the country. But like I said, it's different this year. When you look at Carson Beck stats versus Cam Ward stats, Carson Beck yards per attempt against Power 4 opponents, 6.5 yards per attempt. Cam Ward was 8.9. Last year, much more explosive downfield offense. Cam Ward made a huge name on that of like the crazy throws and extending plays and chucking it down the field, which was great for SportsCenter highlights, but I don't necessarily think that's the recipe for winning a championship. On the flip side, goes hand in hand, turnover worthy plays. Last year, Cam Ward, 1.2 per game. Carson Beck this year, 0.5 in 2025. Offensive line wise, better in 2025. Ninth in run blocking for the Canes, 12th in pass blocking against Power 4 teams. Keep in mind, those Power 4 teams are Notre Dame and Florida early on, and a USF team that still looks really good. In 2024, they were down to 38th in run blocking, 16th in pass blocking. And the 38th in run blocking was very much their Achilles heel a year ago. And side note, Florida's left tackle, Markel Bell, is like the largest human being I've seen in college football this year. I looked at the roster, they have him at 6'9, 345. Anytime you're voluntarily putting an offensive lineman at 345 pounds, you know he's like 375. It's just like a basketball player, even a football player, but a basketball player who, if he's 6 foot tall, his roster height's going to be 6'2", because you want to make him feel better. If you're putting an offensive tackle at 345, that's not good. You want your tackles to be 320, 315, 330. You're 345. That's a red flag looking at the NFL. So I'd be willing to bet that dude's 6'9", 375. It looks freaking crazy. And then their right tackle is a stud NFL guy as well. But now that you said that, look at their left tackle, Markel Bell. He is stupid large, but athletic and gets the job done. Point being, both their tackles and the offensive line is big time. And with that, let me share my screen, because when you have an offensive line that's big time and you got a quarterback that you believe in, you can do some good things. I've been super impressed with Carson Beck. And those of you guys that have followed my content closely, I was a little bit of a hater on Carson Beck. I was not drinking the Kool-Aid last year when everyone was saying he was the number 1 quarterback in the country. I never said that. But I'm to the point now where if the NFL draft was tomorrow, I think Carson Beck's a first-round draft pick. And here's a few plays for why I think that is the case. He gets through his progressions as well as any quarterback in the country. That is not a sexy thing to say, but when you're an NFL scout, it is a valuable thing to say. Check this out. First play right here. TikTok. I got footage on YouTube. I'll try to be better next week. That right there. That just looks like, oh, it's an easy completion. He completes a 12-yard curl. It's third down. It's not easy. 1, it's raining. 2, it's tight coverage. And 3, there's a reason you don't see a lot of college quarterbacks be able to complete intermediate passing game, which that's become like a huge point for me this season. There are so many college football teams that have 0 intermediate passing game. 0. It's non-existent. Why? Because you're asking your quarterback to process reads. You're asking him to throw into tight windows. It's a lot easier to just have RPOs and then take your shots and kind of just skip out on the intermediate passing game. This play right here, YouTube, check out this footage. Carson Beck, dropping back. He's reading a route to his left. He's got 3 receivers to his right, and then completes this ball, which is an accurate throw. He throws that ball right on the left-hand shoulder of this slot receiver. The reason I'm highlighting this specifically, look at his eyes right here, staring down the middle of the field. I guarantee he knows that I'm third down. I got a little option route to my right in that slot. Option route meaning receiver can break out or break in. He knows he's going there the whole time. His entire drop, his eyes are to his left. He even glances right there. He even glances more so to his left. That receiver on the left. He's trying to displace this linebacker so then he can rip his eyes right back. He's already made his decision. He's already pulled this trig before he's going or before his eyes are all the way back there. Rips this accurate ball, left shoulder pad. If that's on the right shoulder pad, might be picked or broken up. That looks like an easy completion. Most college quarterbacks can't do that. You get a first down. And oh by the way, NFL scouts, when they're watching that film, Carson Beck can throw the ball in elements. He's throwing tight spirals when the ball's wet and when it's raining the whole game. Again, good sign NFL wise. This is another example, and you're gonna be like, Max, why you show me an incompletion? What are you talking about here, dude? Why you got? He's been so good. You have to show me an incompletion. This is a perfect example of one, running back should catch the ball, but two, he is processing at a high level. Most quarterbacks aren't even getting this ball out of their hands because they're not able to process their reads this quickly. He's going to start working towards his left, full progression, third down. He's processing two receivers to the far left-hand side. He's going to work his eyes back to this 15-yard curl route, and he wants to hammer this receiver on his right-hand side. He's about to do that, but then when we get to the back end, there's a defensive end that floats into his vision, works to his left, works to his right, about to pull this trigger, but this defensive end or outside linebacker is floating into this window. That's a catastrophic interception waiting to happen. Pulls the ball down. Oh, by the way, feels this blitzing safety or linebacker, whoever this guy is, in his face. You have the linebacker, you have the safety, and in literally a half second, he goes from trying to rip a 15-yard curl to evading the sack, evading the terrible turnover-worthy play, getting the ball out of his hands, and checking it down to his running back. He's getting to his fifth progression in like a second and a half. That's an excellent job. You got to catch that. He's got to make a better throw. But my point is, this is big-time quarterback play. There's a lot of NFL guys we're talking about right now that don't even get to that level of a progression. And then this one's interesting. This is more of just kind of a football nerd concept to me. So if you've got this far in the clip, you'll like this one. And I'll rip through it. But right here, it's third and long. Carson Beck had just thrown an interception. So how do you respond? You're always looking at that as a quarterback. He's going to draw back. Florida's going to do something called a green dog blitz, meaning if the running back stays in to protect, then the linebacker is going to trigger right away and blitz Carson. Look at how quickly Carson realizes what they're doing. Oh, linebacker green dog, he's blitzing. By the linebacker blitzing, that means nobody is covering this running back because the linebacker thinks the running back's protecting. Right away, Carson recognizes that, gets the ball down to his running back, and it goes for a 25-yard pass gain. Little thing that's not sexy, that's not going to make SportsCenter, but this is high-level quarterback processing. Gets the ball, drops back. Oh, linebacker's blitzing. That means no one's on my running back. Let me get it out. And responding, not being rattled after he throws an interception. This is big time. The back end view is even better. Carson Beck showed me a lot, and I was not a Carson Beck guy the past 18 months. This is a good example that I want to show you guys. We got to work on the celebration though. Look at his celebration. This is weird. What is this? He jumps. He doesn't fist pump. He hits himself in the nuts. What is that? What are we doing here? That we got to work on the celebration. He's got the tattoos and the leg sleeve and the swagger. Well, we got to work on that celebration because that ain't doing it for me. Carson Beck though, good on you though, man. I'm impressed. Who do we got in the chat? You two, how we living? Marquise, what's up? H Dizzy, Siobhan, good to see you as always. Jack says, I remember watching your first start at USC, man. That was a brutal day, man. That was a brutal day. Jets should be 2-1. I haven't watched any NFL today. I was prepping for this one. Cheddar 5-4, what's going on? Marquis says, thoughts on Julian Sand? I haven't really seen him since the Texas game, so I got to study up. Same with Joey Aguilar. I didn't watch yesterday's game. AJ, how we living, man? Miami actually has a real defense and supporting cast. Last year was just Cam Ward fending for himself. Crazy part though is, and on paper they had some dudes last year. Any Clemson thoughts? Any Clemson thoughts? And then I'll get into my next little segment here. I guess my take on Clemson is the craziest part is nobody has any explanation for what's going on. Usually when stuff like this happens where a team totally tanks, it's like, oh wow, the quarterback's playing shitty. Oh wow, the offensive line sucks. Oh wow, they got totally out coached. They're getting totally out physical. Oh, the defense just looks sluggish and poor. There's none of that. Dabo doesn't have anything to like point his finger to. Us analysts don't really have anything to point our finger to. You can say, oh, they're getting out coached. All right, fair. But all those coaches have coached at an elite level in recent memory. So then it's like, well, yeah. And I guess where I net out with that is preseason expectations and what that does for you mentally. This roster, maybe they feel like they're owed something and they don't have that edge. And they thought that it was going to be easy this year because people forget that this was not just a 9-month buildup for the hype for Clemson. This is a 3-year buildup for the hype for Clemson. When Cade was young, and then they had some young receivers last year, but then even like when the defensive tackle Peter Woods was young, it was like, oh, get ready, 2025, that's going to be the year. And so there was so much buildup. My best guess is there's just a approach in that locker room like they're owed something, and then when you get off to the wrong foot and it's not working out, you start playing with anxiety, you start playing stiff and not loose, and people are yelling at each other, and your head coach is getting all sorts of negative headlines and press conferences and whatnot. There can just be a tense cloud that enters the locker room, and with these guys being kids, that can work against you. But credit Fran Brown, man. I don't know who does Clemson have this week? They have Louisville in a couple weeks, but that's looking ugly. I still would not want to play Clemson, but that's been ugly so far. And it also speaks to how there's been a changing of the guard in terms of old school, new school in college football. Like this was the week that the old era, the continuity era, the development era, like the 4-year model era, whatever you want to call it, that era of college football, it died this week. Like this past week, the transfer talent triumphed over any sort of development scheme. The new ways, they beat the old. And development obviously like isn't dead. Like every coach you talk to is going to say that, but it doesn't look the same way as it did in 2004 or 2014. And you can go down the list of games that this applies to this past week. Indiana over Illinois, transfer portal-esque program, development program. Syracuse over Clemson. Syracuse, Fran Brown has literally won National Recruiter of the Year before. Much more of a transfer program. He went and got Steve Angeli, went and got Kyle McCord last year. They beat the more developmental program in Clemson. Texas Tech, new school, well documented, 30 million bucks. They went out and literally dominated free agency. New school, dominating old school developmental approach. Kyle Whittingham, Utah Utes. Arkansas, 6-year. Sam Pittman, I believe it's 6-year developmental program. Get guys in the system, play juniors and seniors. They get beat by a Memphis team, largely comprised of transfers. Maryland, embracing the NIL era, spending big bucks to have a homegrown starting true freshman quarterback come to your school, stay at your school, beating literally the most prominent developmental program of the 2010s. Stanford might have something to say about that, but Wisconsin getting it done. Like literally all those games, literally go down the list. Again, to just tap into it more. Texas Tech. Baron Morton, I know he went down in the third quarter. And the Texas Tech defense, that might be the key for them this entire year. But they held the Utes to 3.8 yards per carry on 69, or just 3.8 yards in general on 69 offensive snaps. Devin Dampier, who I was super high on, those of you guys on YouTube know that I did a full breakdown on him. 263 total yards, 162 passing. Sorry, 162 passing yards, 27 rushing yards. That's the least amount of total yards he's had in a game where he's took every snap. Keep in mind, too, Utah, from 2010 to 2024, 12% of the three-star recruits that committed to Utah became NFL draft picks. Let me say that. That's a crazy stat. 12% of the three-star recruits that committed to Utah became NFL draft picks. That is wild. Especially as a guy who, was supposed to be that. That's Utah getting it done. It's by far the best rate in the Big 12 and the fourth best rate nationally. And then going into this season, Utah returned 75% of its production. So in terms of development, and then hoping that those guys take even a greater step, that's what Utah was this season. That was the third best rate amongst Power 4 teams in terms of production returning, and the 11th best nationally. 50% of Texas Tech's team came by way of the transfer portal. Out of every team in the nation, they signed the third most 4- and 5-star guys out of the portal. For Indiana versus Illinois, literally you had developmental guy in Luke Altmaier versus Fernando Mendoza, high-profile transfer portal guy. And I'll get into that. I'll get into Mendoza a little bit later, but that's stark contrast. Indiana hired Curt Cignetti, and they've bet big on the portal. 10th ranked portal class in 2024, 14th ranked portal class in 2025. Like I said, Syracuse versus Clemson. Syracuse went and got Steve Angeli from Notre Dame. He led the country in passing yards per game heading into that game. Cade Klubnik, the poster child of staying out of school and developing along the way. Dude, that's freaking crazy too. The Maryland Wisconsin storyline. Like, what is Wisconsin? And Wisconsin's in a tough spot because they got in even more trouble because they tried to be a program that they weren't. They tried to go more physical and get away from the old ways, and them being awkward in like are we the most physical team? Well, are we trying to embrace new school and be more wide open? Caught them in the gray area, and I think that's the reason why the program struggled so much. When Luke Fickell comes out with his book, that's what the first chapter of the Wisconsin section is going to be. I'd be willing to bet he says we should have stayed with our old ways. I know Altmaier was a transfer, I know, but he very much developed at Illinois. Did I see the 49ers game? I haven't, no. Johan, what's going on? Marquis says Malik Washington is that guy at Maryland. He's a baller for sure. He's a baller for sure. All right, I want to talk Indiana next too. Michigan has a solid young core. Does Michigan play Indiana again this year? Because that could give Indiana problems. One sec. Indiana schedule. They don't. Because Indiana, and then I'll get into my thoughts on the Indiana game because I got some Fernando Mendoza thoughts, but Indiana is going to struggle when they face a team that has a great defensive line. That's my little cliffhanger, and then I'll unpack it because their offense is. There's literally 2 plays in that game that I would consider drop back passes for Fernando Mendoza. And when they face a good D line, they will be forced to drop back more. and that will be the true test for that offense. Isaac, appreciate you with the Michigan logo. But yeah, let's talk Indiana, Illinois. That was a huge game. We already talked Miami, Florida. The other big game was Indiana, Illinois. See, a team like last year's Indiana, like they used to be cute. Every like 2 decades there'd be a random team that would get lucky and would strike the right group of upperclassmen and the right coach and just, you would strike everything perfectly in the concoction of your team. And that was like their 1, maybe 2 years of like their window of opportunity to challenge the big dogs. And the big dogs, the blue blood programs, in this case in the Big Ten, like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, they'd be like, all right, this is annoying. Why is Northwestern popping up? Michigan State had some sustainability, but all right, why is Iowa popping up? It was annoying, but like everyone in the college football world could agree, it's great for college football. You need those scenarios because they make the best storylines in that specific college football year. When, I'm a West Coast guy. So when Washington State and Gardner Minshew had those years, or I grew up when Oregon State with the Cooks brothers were like, yo, what the heck is Mike Riley doing with the Beavs? Or, last year with Arizona State, you need those teams to come out of nowhere. But there was always the thought in the back of your mind of like, all right, that's cute, but inevitably there's a shelf life for this Washington State, Oregon State, Iowa, Northwestern. Like eventually you're going to come back down, and the reality is you're not a blue blood, and you know that was the old school mentality. But in 2025, I think Indiana's proven that they're a blue blood's worst nightmare, because I don't think this is a flash in the pan. I don't even think this is necessarily just a Kurt Signetti thing. I think they are showing that there is legitimate proof of concept that if you invest money in the right coach and talent around them and have a very strong alumni and donor base around you, there is proof that blue bloods can be consistently challenged year in and year out. That is what Indiana is showing. Last year wasn't just a fluke. Everyone knows Indiana's donor base is as strong as any, or can be as strong as any. I'm buying the Kool-Aid of what what can be, what Kirk Cincinnati can be. I don't know what his buyout is too, but with some of these head coaching jobs potentially coming open, dude, Kurt Cignetti's agent better be freaking working those deals. And again, that kind of proves my point though. If Indiana's willing to spend the money, there's no reason Kurt Cignetti shouldn't leave. I saw Josh Pate made the take yesterday that Kentucky's the best job in college football. I think there was some context there. But his point was the expectations for Kentucky are so low. They have the budget to pay you out the ass. And if you just win 7, 8 games, maybe pop a 9-win season, people are stoked and your quality of life is great. Indiana, you could say the same thing. Kurt Cignetti, it's all upside, right? Even if Indiana would be excited just going to bowl games in this current era. Now they're competing for national or for conference titles, at least in this window. Indiana, there's no reason Kurt Cignetti couldn't bring them and change the narrative of, hey, 10 years from now, we're talking about Indiana as maybe the 2010s Wisconsin or something like that. That could happen. But the game last week or yesterday, Indiana beat down Illinois 63-10. Kurt Cignetti 15-2 overall at Indiana. And those two losses to the teams that he played ended up being were Ohio State and Notre Dame. Not too shabby. Outgained Illinois 579-161. And Fernando Mendoza, who I called his very first start at Cal. I remember it. It was not. They did not publicize it because they didn't. Justin Wilcox, Cal's head coach, didn't want to. Fernando Mendoza is a very interesting personality. He's a very like giddy, especially when he was younger. He's the best player interview I've ever had as a commentator. Like he'll give you, how do I verbalize this? And I don't know if he's this way now. I'm sure he is, but he's all smiles. He's geeked up to be like talking to the media. He's got phenomenal one-liners. The sun is always shining. Everyone's always, playing the best they always can. He's like, the type of guy that if you're having a bad day, give Fernando Mendoza a call and he'll hype you up. But the reason they didn't announce he was a starter because they didn't want him to like get too just all like geeked up and hyped up. So like, all right, we got to mellow this down. But it's been cool over the past 3 years to see his ascent, and he is a baller and playing at a really high level. But there's two plays that stick out to me in terms of giving you guys value for what I'm seeing when I turn on the Indiana film. For those of you guys on TikTok, I got footage on YouTube. Fernando Mendoza had however many completions he had last game. What was it, in the 30s, 20s? I mean, he had more touchdowns than he did incompletions. He had 5 touchdowns, 2 incompletions. I forgot to write down how many he actually had. But this offense, and this is super important for you guys to know because this is some value from a betting perspective too. These two plays I'm about to show you are literally the only 2 progression passes they asked Fernando Mendoza to make. Max, why does that matter? Why should I care about that? You should care about that because for 2 reasons. One, a lot of people talking about Fernando Mendoza as a first round NFL draft pick. I'm not going to get there with him if he's never asked to make progression passes because that gives me concern versus like Carson Beck. I would say 2/3 of his pass plan, a half of his pass plays are progression passes. Dropping back, they're asking your quarterback to make 1, 2, 3, 4 reads. For Fernando Mendoza, it's all RPO game and like, yeah, it's literally like all RPO game. You talk about an RPO offense, that's Indiana. The reason I was hesitating is like sometimes when people say RPOs, they think run pass option with like slant routes, but it also applies to just bubbles and or now routes or now screens, whatever you want to call them. In terms of we'll spread the receivers out, read the numbers in the box, and then you make your decision right on the pre-snap before the ball's before the ball snapped. But Fernando Mendoza can do it. He's just not asked to do progression passes all that often. Right here, this is his first touchdown pass in this ball game. He does have great patience, hangs in the pocket, layers this football over the top. That's NFL quarterback play. I like this. Look at his patience, gets this open, arm strength. He doesn't always look the most fluid or the most smooth, but his arm strength really good. This is another one right here in the end zone, 10-yard out, big boy throw on the right hash, throwing your guys open. It's an accurate throw. That is it. That is literally, you can watch the film. Those are the only 2 progression passes that Fernando Mendoza is asked to make the entire game. Everything else is run fake, ball out, reading numbers, ball out. Like, I don't want to diminish his quarterback play because he's doing exactly what he's asked to do, but it's important from the NFL perspective, and it's also important from a betting projections standpoint because when Indiana faces a team with a legit line, that's where Indiana is going to be tested because that RPO scheme doesn't work when you have a defense you're playing that can control the offensive line with their front 4, or dare I say front 3. And when you look at Indiana's schedule, Oregon in 2 weeks, dude, if I'm Dan Lanning in that Oregon defense, I am saying front 4, go win us this game. Because when you win with your front 4, then the run is not a factor. Everyone knows that. That's day one football knowledge. But then the RPO is not a factor because those linebackers aren't worried about filling those gaps. And Oregon's linebackers are super athletic where they can hang out with those slot receivers. You can have safeties roll down into the hook curl area, and those RPO slants, those RPO bubbles, RPO out routes, they don't work. And in that game, which will be in Autzen in like 2 weeks, I'm saying it right now, they're going to win up front against Indiana's offensive line, that front 4. And then Fernando Mendoza is going to, instead of being asked to have 2 progression passes like he did against Illinois, he's going to be asked to have 15. And if Fernando Mendoza passes that test and he does some good things on the road in Autzen, well, then sign me up for Fernando Mendoza being a first-round NFL draft pick. But I'm nervous about that because I don't know. I've called in person. I've seen Fernando Mendoza in person probably 4 times. I've called like 4 Cal games. He's good. He's a really good college quarterback. But if that opportunity is huge in terms of the eval perspective, he's going to get 12 to 15 progression passes against Oregon. And can he throw guys open when he's getting to his 3rd and 4th progression? It's key right there. And I looked it up. I think Indiana will be 12-point underdogs. I know it's 2 weeks away, but I think 12-point underdogs versus Oregon. Give me the Ducks. Give me the Ducks. I do not think that's a good matchup for Indiana. Do not think it. And I hope I verbalized that well because that's like a really like football nerds, football X's and O's junkies like me. That's a good Indiana's offense is unique like that. Lot different than here's the best way to say it. I'm going to talk about Josh Hoover, TCU's quarterback. I've already talked about Carson Beck. I'm going to talk about John Mateer. Those three offenses, way different than Indiana's. Indiana's all RPO based. TCU, they're handing the ball to Josh Hoover and saying, go win us this game. Carson Beck, much more pro style. John Mateer, best player in college football, does a little bit of everything. Chat, how we doing? Isaac, what's going on, man? You say Oregon 6.5. If Oregon is favored by only 6.5 versus Indiana at home, we're hammering that line. Hammering that line. Kurt says, Chad says Curtin is elite head coach. The Indiana squad is only going to keep improving as well. They have a shot at being the problem this year. Making the playoff at all last season was solid for them. Yeah, that'll be interesting narrative wise if Indiana is in the hunt again. Like last year, it was so easy to dog on them for having like a terrible schedule. If they get back there, you like can't necessarily say that, right? Baby Hill says you don't want to hear my bets in Vegas. These games are all rigged. Um, well, if you don't want to hear my analysis of the bets, that's all good. You don't have to take them, but it's still good football chatter. And with that, this is like one of the most sneaky things I do. So I'm like putting out all sorts of different content, and some of you guys see me on YouTube, some of them are TikTok, some of you guys see me in just like non-football stuff. I was 65% against the spread last year, 128 and like 84. I have the receipts to back it up. This year, I am 32 and 27. Not as good as 65%, but still making money. We're still over the threshold, and the sample size is large enough where we're doing some damage now. Which is, side note, that Oklahoma bad beat. I don't know if they got to the bad beats last week or last night on SportsCenter. That was atrocious. I had Auburn covering that. That was terrible. The fact that it was up what 5, and I was like, all right, sweet, they're good to go. They're driving. If anything, they're going to try to drive to win this game. But there's no way that Oklahoma is going to cover this. And then they have a safety to then miss the cover by a half point. Get the hell out of here. That was brutal. That was brutal. Ron, what's going on? Chris, Timu, Joe Burrow, Michigan State bad beat. So I was on my flight. So beauty of having a 12 noon Eastern kick. I was able to do the flight from Louisville to Atlanta and then Atlanta back to LA and sleep in my own bed for the first Saturday of this football season, which is absolutely amazing. The Atlanta to LA flight is so clutch because you get the bigger planes too. And they had like the international, I got upgraded to first class too, also clutch. They had the pods, like the full on, like you can recline and have a little bed, also clutch. And the dude sitting behind me was Zebo, Zach Randolph, who is literally a top 10, one of my top 10 favorite NBA players because he reminds me of like my dad's basketball playing style with a little baby hook. Anyways, I like got up and I was like, yo, it's Zebo. And of course I was like, man, loved the those days of what was it, like the 2012 when the Grizzlies were always like the 8 seed with Zach Randolph, Marc Gasol, Tony Allen, Mike Conley, and then who was their 3? Rudy Gay. Like that was a squad. Zebo is nasty, man. Delta One Elite, you know it. All right, enough hoops. Let's talk more quarterback play. So back in the day, Paul Hornbug was one of the best running backs of his day. Hang with me for a sec. On December 12th, 1965, he scored a Green Bay Packers record 5 touchdowns in a game. And he tells a great story of waking up the next morning with his chest puffed, feeling all great about himself, thinking he's the man, goes down to the kitchen table, opens up the paper, and is like, all right, of course, I'm going to see my name there. and the front page of the paper says Sayers scores 6. You probably don't know who Paul Hornung is. Had a day, probably don't know who he is, but you do know who Gale Sayers is. That right there is how TCU quarterback Josh Hoover has to feel this season. He leads the country in passing yards per game and touchdowns per game. He's won a primetime matchup with the whole college football world watching against one of the greatest football coaches of all time in Bill Belichick. He's undefeated and right now has 18-1 Heisman odds. Might be some sneaky value there. And still, with all of that, he's not even the third most talked about quarterback in his own state. Texas has got a lot of teams, but TCU, they're doing some good things, and their quarterback is legit. I had him in person last year in the Iron Skillet game, which just happened yesterday. I had it last year. Great rivalry, fun time. He was 22 for 40, 371 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, 2 sacks versus SMU. 6 carries for 35 yards. And then I saw ESPN was loving up his go-to playmaker, Eric McAllister. 8 catches on 14 targets, 254 yards, and 3 tutties. Those slant routes were lethal. But what makes Josh Hoover great, those of you guys on YouTube, I'm going to the footage, is a little bit of everything. You can tell he's got the baseball background. Josh Hoover's a baller. And I feel like the average college football fan knows him because of all the Nico Iamaleava Tennessee chatter. And like Josh Hoover was the guy that Tennessee was reportedly like trying to get. They went Joey Aguilar. Well, there's a reason they were trying to go get Josh Hoover. And it's because of throws like this. Check this out. This is big time. Early on in the ball game. This is just a quarterback making a play. SMU rushes 6. He gets flushed out, and this is a 20, 30, 35-yard strike, accurate dime on the run while getting hit. This is big league right here. This is big league. You want to rush 6? All right, sweet. Don't let me get outside the pocket. Rips it, gets hit, falls on his throwing shoulder, accurate throw, touchdown. Big time. Right here, it's not just running around having fun, having backyard football plays. Josh Hoover can process at a high level. On this play right here, he's going to work the bottom of the screen on a route concept. I think it's a comeback to the bottom of your screen. And then quickly, he's going to get back to a dig, working right to left at like 12, 15 yards. He makes this throw look easy. Boom. That's not an easy throw. Behind the first linebacker, if he's late at all, it allows this middle linebacker in the middle of the field to get involved. And 1, it's a clean your clock shot, or 2, it's an interception, incompletion, whatever. But behind this first linebacker, ripping it in front of this middle linebacker, he's looking for work. He's dropping and looking literally at this dig route to go clean this dude's clock. Josh Hoover makes this look super easy. Play action, eyes go left, back right, rips it. Arm strength, accurate, right on his receiver. When you're sitting on your couch at home, I think it's because we see these types of throws all day long in the NFL. Not every college quarterback can do this. And I made this point in the open of this live for people watching all the way through. It's hitting me this way different. Not every college team has an intermediate passing game. And so when you do, and you have a quarterback who can operate that, dude, it opens up your entire offense. I would be willing to say, when you're playing the quarterback position and you can show that you can hit intermediate routes, meaning 12-yard curl routes, 12-yard basic routes, meaning in routes, meaning 10 or 15-yard out routes, or right here, more of that 15-yard dig by the slot. When you show you can do that, you give yourself 2 more easy free completions later on in the game, meaning little flat routes, little check down routes, little slant routes. Why? Because when you show you can do this, the defense now gets a little bit softer. That's those safeties say, oh man, he's pressing the ball down the field. They get a little bit deeper. Those linebackers are like, oh crap, he's having to throw this ball behind my head. I got to manage more. I got to look around. When they're looking around, when they're managing more, that's how you get easy little hitch routes. That's how you get easy little slant routes. That's why it's so critical. And I think championship level rosters have to have an intermediate passing game, which I just told you about Indiana. They don't have that. At least they didn't have to show it versus Illinois. I don't know if they have that. It's been very RPO quick game based. But watch Josh Hoover's eyes here. Goes to his right. Dude, that's clinic tape. Goes to his right, tries to pull this trigger, not there. Reset, ball, arm strength, accurate, money. That's big time quarterback play. And then this one right here, again, when you're sitting on your couch, this just looks like an easy 9-yard curl completion. It's not. This is all Josh Hoover. Look at how early he throws this football. It's getting pressure in his face. This is 3rd and 9 late in the ball game. It's a close game. You're going back and forth with your rival. He knows he's got a one-on-one matchup to the top of your screen. Look at how early he throws this football. 1, 2, 3, ball out. The receiver is not even out of his break. He has thrown this. He's thrown this right now. This receiver is a full 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yards from getting out of his break. You're on the right hash. You throw your receiver open. NFL scouts see that and say, dude, sign me up. Check the back view right here. 1, 2, 3, knows he has pressure, gets the ball out of his hands, throws his receiver open, come down with the catch, get the first down. 2 of those throws I just showed you right there. Looks kind of average, whatever on your couch. Those are big time quarterback play. Like this TCU squad. I like Josh Hoover. I haven't seen enough of Sawyer, BYU's quarterback. I need to watch that film. But Josh Hoover's definitely better than Arch Manning right now. He's better than Baron Morton. Baron Morton's a good quarterback, but he's better than Baron Morton. Josh Hoover's playing like the best quarterback in Texas right now, maybe outside of Dak Prescott and CJ Stroud, but you get my point. The chat asks, user 4916, why did I not go to UW instead of USC? Because UW wasn't good when I was in high school, man. They weren't good. I always say if I was 5 years younger and I was recruited in the Chris Peterson era, that I could have been a different story going to UW. Thoughts on the Panthers? I was prepping for this college football show, so I didn't see how it ended, but they took care of business, right? My Michael Penix take is hurting right now. Ooh, I just lost your name in the chat, but someone just asked me, what are my thoughts on Louisville? Louisville is one of the best teams in the country that nobody is talking about. Nobody is talking about Louisville. Yet they have what they think is the best running back room in the country. They got some good receivers out wide. I should know this off the top of my head, but let me check my board. Chris Bell, stud. Colin Lacey went off in our game yesterday. They could do some things. Louisville's going to sneak up on some people. But got to keep your mind out or your eye out for Louisville. The transfer they got from Coastal Carolina, Kleb Lubin, beast. NFL pass rusher type beast. That dude, I don't know what must just be really smart. His get-off's incredible. He's a little bit undersized, 6'3", 250 for an NFL pass rusher, but that dude's going to give ACC teams problems. Louisville, don't sleep on them. Biggest thing for Louisville is how quickly they can get Miller Moss comfortable and in rhythm, because it's a new scheme for him. Let's talk another big time quarterback. I got some. Where did I go? Sorry. Boom. 1 second here. I'm talking John Mateer, so hang on. Boom. All right, we're talking John Mateer. This dude's freaking legit, man. This dude is legit. Mateer Mania. See, I said I wasn't going to do another video on John Mateer. And those of you guys on YouTube know that I made a video 2 weeks ago. It's fun. Check it out. But about the 3 different characters on trial to determine if John Mateer was like Baker Mayfield. And I thought that was enough Mateer content until we got to the Red River rivalry here in a couple weeks. Try to say that 5 times fast. Goodness gracious. And then I was going to be like, all right, then we can get into Mateer after that game because that'll be the big test. But there is a new comparison that keeps coming out for John Mateer, and that is how similar is the now betting favorite to win the Heisman and the dude that just beat Auburn How similar is he to Johnny Manziel? Not Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel. I still kind of like the Baker Mayfield comp, but Johnny Manziel being thrown out there a lot more. And he had a great quote yesterday for those of you guys that didn't see, where he's like, I forget the exact question, but he was like, "I'm going to church tomorrow morning. That's how I'm different than Johnny Manziel." I just butchered that whole quote, but I thought it was telling for the kind of guy that he is. But yesterday, he beats Oklahoma's former quarterback Jackson Arnold. Arnold went 21 for 32, 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 10 sacks. I was watching this from a airport bar having a Coors Light about how many sacks he was taking. Anytime you're a quarterback taking 10 sacks, at a certain point, bro, you got to help out your offensive line. You cannot take 10 sacks if you're a quarterback. Jackson Arnold didn't get a ton of help. Refs didn't help him. The false starts were terrible. I get it. You cannot take 10 sacks if you're a quarterback. You got to get the ball to your hands. And that's coming from a guy who I was a pocket passer guy. That still holds true if you're a pocket passer. If you're a dual threat and you can run around and you can make people miss, you cannot take 10 sacks, period. I don't care how bad your offensive line is. John Mateer went 24 for 36, 266 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, 1 sack. Had 9 carries for 34 yards. Those of you guys that saw my live 2 weeks ago, and this will get into how does he compare to Johnny Manziel. One area they're different. Mateer's more powerful. Mateer's built to withstand high double-digit carries a week in the SEC. I believe that. I think he can do that. I think he'll live right in that 9 to 15 category a game. And I think he's built to do that. Johnny Manziel wasn't built to do that. Johnny Manziel was much more, we got to pick our spots. Got to get the quarterback draw here and there. All right, it's third and got to have it. We're right up against the end zone. All right, then we'll run Johnny Manziel. Dude, Mateer, it's 2nd and 7. Sweet. You like a front and a certain look you're getting, dial him up. But you got to put him on quota. But I will say, and I think John Mateer is the best quarterback in college football. No one's talking about him yet through an NFL lens. If he keeps playing like this, it would not surprise me if he's the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. I think he's that good. I think his film's legit, man. His film's legit. It's not just running around and having fun. He's making big time throws. But in terms of how does he compare to Johnny Manziel? One area that was a huge strength for Johnny Manziel that I think is an area that Mateer needs to improve on is layering the football. Johnny Manziel did a phenomenal job he always had a knack for great touch, those second level throws. If a level 1 throw is on a line, which John Mateer loves to do, level 3 ball is home run shot. See fade ball down the field. Level 2 somewhere in between. Johnny Manziel, great at that. Sometimes it was almost like, dude, how was he so accurate with that throw? But he found a way, even with the crazy footwork and all that. John Mateer, I think, could be better when it comes to that area. And here are the examples to show you. He missed 2 maybe touchdowns in this game on layering the football right here. On YouTube, he's going to have a concept with his tight end on a little hitch route to the left. But he's got his slot receiver, the number 3 receiver on the top of the screen, working what looks like a dig route, or I'll watch it with you guys in real time. But I forget if it's a dig route or if it's a vertical taking this left hash or if it's an over route. But moral of the story, this slot receiver is going to get to this vacated grass over here on the left side hash. This safety right here is very low and is not a factor in this. The safety on the right-hand side over this number 3 receiver is having to manage these 2 receivers. There is a shit ton of grass over here to the left-hand side. And Mateer misses this. He tries to throw a bullet throw. So it is a dig route. He tries to bullet one in there to that dig route. Let this develop, bro. Let this develop and throw your dig route down here. Put some touch on it. Lob it over here. There are no defenders here. This could have been a house call. And when you look how frustrated the receiver gets. See his body language? Oh, I'll show you on the back end. Works over. Mateer tries to bolt it in there. Manziel had that sense of knowing where the open windows are, where I can level that football, layer that football. Watch number 4, look how pissed he gets. He's like, "Fuck, man." Because he knows. Look at he's looking up at the sky. He's like, he knows it. There was tons of green grass right there. Rather than driving this football, layer it over these linebackers, and you have a touchdown. On one side, you love the arm strength from Mateer. On the other side, doesn't always have to be a fastball. And I'm wary of, I think that's like an analyst cliche is like, oh, it doesn't always have to be a fastball because Mateer can layer the football. He has shown he can layer the football. He has shown that he can do everything. But to me, when you're projecting to the NFL or when you're evaluating him as an NFL prospect of like, hey, where can he get better? It's on these level 2 layering the football throws. Another example right here. The last one was a dig route. This is going to be an over route by one of the receivers here on the bottom of your screen. It's going to be an over route. They're taking this grass on the 35-yard line right here. This is wide ass open. Wide ass open. Fake the run. This dude right here running to this open grass. Wide ass open. Even at the college football ranks. Mateer throws an inaccurate throw. This is poor. He throws it behind his receiver. He's lucky that he still got a completion. This is easy stuff. Watch this back view. Those behind the receiver. Lucky he came down with it. This is a mechanics footwork thing that I'll get into. But the point I want to drive home here is Manziel's DNA is to drive this football. Drive this football. Put it on your receiver right away. And it's actually hitting me now that as I say that, that was the critique I had when we did the film breakdown versus Michigan, when he had those home run touchdown shots down the field and he elected to like drive it on the receiver right away. And I was like, nah, dude, put it over the top. Give your receiver a chance to make the play. There's something in his bones that always wants to fastball it. And it comes through right here. Layer this football, give your guy something an easy ball to catch. The natural next question is like, Max, why does this happen? Why does this happen? And in terms of comparing him to Manziel, I think they're very similar in terms of their presence in the pocket. They're very athletic in the pocket. They're not as strict and robotic with their footwork, which I think that allows them to make more plays in the pocket and puts a lot of pressure on the defense. But because they're not as clean with their footwork, sometimes Mateer can be hoppy and get left to right from a drop back standpoint. And then when you couple the hop getting left to right with his 3/4 motion, if they don't time up perfectly, sometimes he can get out of sync. And that's what I think happens here. Watch him jump to his right. It's kind of hoppy, 3/4 motion, gets away from him. Again, this is very critical, but I say it through the lens of, all right, how does he, is he really that dude? Like when we're really talking about it like that, I think he's a stud, best quarterback in college football. Again, right now he's the number 1 quarterback for me in next year's class. Like people are saying, and I hate this because this is going to come down as an anti-Lenora Sellers take, but I saw a graphic yesterday when I was in the booth calling a game that 2/3 of NFL execs right now, if they had to draft the number 1 quarterback in the NFL draft, would take Lenora Sellers. Lenora Sellers is not better than John Mateer. Lenora Sellers is a really good quarterback. Would not surprise me if he's a first-round pick. I need to meet those NFL execs that are taking Lenora Sellers over John Mateer as an NFL quarterback because I got to know what you're watching. And then last throw right here, and I'll circle it around with the Johnny Manziel comp right here, after that. But like I said, he's shown that he can do it. This is an excellent example of layering the football. This is a big time throw. This is a close game. This is 4th quarter, I believe. This is a tight window. This is an NFL level throw. You're throwing it to a tight end over 2 linebackers in front of 1 safety. If you throw this 12 inches too high, it could be picked and maybe you're losing this game. If you throw it 12 inches too low, it's definitely picked by the linebacker. Check this out. This tight end's going to work this middle of the field by the SEC logo. John Mateer layers the football, throws it, bang, big time throw. Back end view is excellent too. See, watch that. Ooh, that's a good example too. You guys will like this. if you're a Matir Hardo or you're more of an NFL fan and you've made it this far into this clip, look at how wacky uh, Matir's drop is. He literally starts. Just watch it, and this is very Manziel esque. Hop, hop, hop. Look at that. His drop started 2 inches to our right of the hash, or sorry, 2 yards to our right of the hash. And then it ends a yard to the left of the hash. That ain't good. That ain't good. And again, on one side, you can say, "Oh, Max, you're being too critical. Let him be athletic." Fair. I like that. Matir's a beast. Let him be athletic. He's kind of got that middle infielder because I know he was a baseball player, kind of moxie there. But on the flip side, when he's inaccurate with throws, this is why. He's not inaccurate here. That's a dime. Look at that. Theme of this live's been intermediate passing game. This is intermediate passing game at a high level. Over 2 linebackers in front of the safety, protect your wideout. That's getting it done. And so taking this full circle to the Manziel comp, I think there's similarities. Their release, their maneuvers in the pocket, very similar. How you call plays for both these guys, I think is similar. It's not identical. I think you can lean even more on quarterback runs for John Matier. But in terms of if I'm an OC at the college level, their skill sets in terms of what I'm bringing to the park game plan wise, very similar. How they're different, I think Matier has a stronger arm, which is why, again, people aren't really talking about him as a NFL guy, but Matier's got a stronger arm. I think he's more powerful than Manziel in that, again, projecting towards the next level. Hey, can you have more design quarterback runs for him? Can he withstand a beating? Can he hang in the pocket more and take more hits? I think Matier is better than Manziel in that way. I watched Matier last year at Washington State, but I do think Manziel's vision was a little bit better, meaning like his ability to just make plays, pocket collapsing, him running around, making defensive ends miss. You don't see as much of that with Manziel. I mean, gosh, Manziel and Matier are tough to say back to back. But like Manziel was always getting flushed out, making defensive ends run a mile on one play. Not saying that's always good, but that was very much part of Manziel's game. That doesn't show up as much with Matier. And then I mentioned it and we just broke it all down. I think Manziel's touch was a notch better than Matier's touch through 4 games this football season. Not saying Matier can't do it, not saying Matier can't get there, but you can tell when you're watching the film, in Matier's DNA, it's drive the football, which I don't mind. I'd rather be that way than the other way. But in terms of how those guys compare, that's where I land on that one. That was good stuff, though. Talk Josh Hoover, talk Matier, talk Fernando Mendoza, talk Indiana, and talk the changing of the guard this year for college football. Up against time. See how the chat's living. And then I got to go get a little haircut, man. We're getting a little wild. Marquise asks, why is everyone so high on Sellers? Marquise, type in right now. Is he the next Superman, Max Brown? I did a whole YouTube breakdown on LaNorris Sellers. I was slower to roll. I see the talent. I see the ceiling. Everyone's so high on him because we're looking to anoint the next quarterback, and he's fun to watch. He's got all the tools on paper that you want. He is not there right now as a top 10 overall pick for an NFL team, in my opinion. He could get there. He had a super strong second half of last football season, but he's not there yet. I haven't seen his game from yesterday, so we'll see how that goes. Derek says, remember that 410-yard 4 TD masterclass against Rice in 2017? I don't, man. Who was the quarterback in that game, dude? Sounds like an ACC all ACC kind of performance, man. What college quarterback is most NFL ready? Right now, if I'm an NFL GM, I'm taking John Matier. He's a baller, dude. He's a baller. I like Carson Beck, which is, I never thought I would say that. That's not me talking out of both sides of my mouth. I know I was critical with Carson Beck the past 18 months. He's shown me a lot this month in terms of being NFL ready. but I go Garrett Nussmeier over him. So I'll go John Mateer 1, Garrett Nussmeier 2, Carson Beck 3. Carson Beck 3. Am I forgetting anybody? I think all the headlines around Dante Moore, I'm not all the way there yet, but I think there's some legitimacy there. Yeah. Does Wentz take JJ McCarthy's job for the whole year? I saw the stat line. Good for Wentz, man. Good for Wentz. All right. I'm gonna sign off. Appreciate you guys. That was fun. We'll be clipping out all these segments for any of you guys that were like, Max, you're talking about X's and O's, and I don't know what you're saying. We'll be clipping them out. I'll be posting them Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Keep a lookout for that. We're rocking and rolling on YouTube. For those of you guys on YouTube, I'm gonna stop. I guess we'll cross that in 2 weeks, but I got a good YouTube video. Everyone listening to this, I got a phenomenal YouTube video. What it's really like when your coach gets fired mid-season, coming out Tuesday morning. That's all the news coming out right now in college football. In my college career, I had to live through Steve Sarkisian getting fired midseason and Lane Kiffin getting fired midseason, and low-key Ed Orgeron not getting retained midseason. And I'll walk through all that in my YouTube video. So if you're on TikTok right now, exit away and type in my YouTube. Give a subscription there. And then for those of you guys hanging on YouTube, bookmark it. Coming out Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific. And then I'll see you guys in the next live next Sunday, 4:30 Pacific. We're reacting to Week 6 game. Should be a good slate. See you guys.